Today we're going to replace the valve cover gasket on a 1993 Jeep Wrangler. The gasket's leaking, causing the oil to leak down the sides of the motor. This motor's got about 125,000 miles on it. It's a 4-cylinder. The valve cover gasket is pretty easy to replace. We'll walk you through it. You can certainly do this at home, no problem. We're going to do a complete oil change and filter change when we do this job. We're upping the oil viscosity to 40 weight, straight 40. We're here in Florida, so we don't need the multi-grade oil. Lubricate a bit better and also take care of probably any other leaks that we may have. Not sure which filter. This motor came with 2 filters. One is a fine thread, one is a coarse thread, so we just bought both and we'll return the one that doesn't work. Also, this is a real handy tool for changing your oil in your driveway. So this is really all you need. First step is to locate and remove the 10 bolts that hold down the valve cover. A couple of them have an extra stud sticking out the top, and that's to hold accessories, like for instance this wire rail which held the original spark plug wires down. This particular motor has been changed. We're not going to reinstall that. But the first step is to remove all the bolts. They're all easily accessible. Even the ones back there around the firewall are real easy to get to with a ratchet. There's 2 hoses that go into the valve cover. One is up here. The vent back there, we need to remove that, so it just turns right towards the firewall and pops straight out. Once everything's out, the valve cover will just come right off. Careful for whatever wires are over top. And there you go. The last person that did this job, it looks like they didn't even use a gasket. They just gunked it up with some liquid gasket or high temp silicone and squashed it in there. So what we're going to do is take a putty knife, remove all of this. We're also going to clean up the top of the block, and we'll put the new gasket in place. We should be good to go. We're going to use a putty knife to remove this gasket material, and the valve cover is aluminum. We do need to be really careful not to scratch or mar the aluminum cover, or we'll end up with a potential leak point. We decided to go ahead and take this off because we really do need to get this completely off the truck, so we might even pressure wash it. We decided to pressure wash it. It was too much of a mess, so we soaked it in some degreaser, and we're just going to blast it. We have to make sure that where the gasket sits, right here, is all clean. Fortunately, there's not much gasket material on it because most of it's stuck to the cover, but we still have to get in there and make sure there's no grease and get that surface as clean as we can. Taking a screwdriver and wrapping it with a diaper seems to be a good way to get in there to clean the top of the gasket, or clean the top of the block off where the gasket sits. The first thing we need to do is make sure the gasket fits. So we're going to dry fit it, and it looks like it is the right one. We're going to use a little high heat silicone to secure this in place. We'll let it set up so when we flip it over to mount it on the engine, it stays in place. We're going to put a very, very thin layer all the way around. We're going to wipe it with our finger so that it's super thin. After we've got it on there, we're going to take and just thin it out and remove any excess. All we want is a really thin layer. So we've got a nice thin coating of the gasket sealer all around the gasket. Go ahead and put it in place now that we've got a nice thin coating of gasket sealer on it, and we'll let it set up. Putting the cover back on is a little bit of a two-person gig, so we're going to do it together. As you can see, we've got the gasket all set up. We're going to just place it right back in there. And it does need to be put in at a little bit of an angle forward because it kind of comes up. Oh, that was easier than I thought. So there we go. Back in place. We'll go around and we'll check and make sure that the gasket is didn't get buckled anywhere or slip out of position. And next we'll put the bolts back on. All we're doing is tightening the nuts. We're just going to torque them down slightly and pay attention to try to get the cover to come down evenly on the gasket. The correct torque for the valve cover is 85 pounds, so we're going to adjust the wrench right up to the 85 pound mark, and we'll go ahead and do the final tightening with the torque wrench. If you've never used a torque wrench, once you've set it up to the right pounds, you just go ahead and tighten the bolt. And right there. So hear that click? That click means we're at 85 pounds. We've got everything back in place. Just going to start it up, make sure that we don't see any visible leaks. Oil pressure. Good. Make sure the gauge shows oil pressure. And we'll let it run for a little bit, mostly just to heat up the oil because we're going to go ahead and do an oil change. Just let it run for about 20 minutes and it's not leaking at all. You can see all around a little bit of that gasket material has come out of the gasket sealer, which is great. No leaking. Oil pressure actually went up a little bit, which is great. The combination of replacing this gasket and moving to the 40 weight oil should completely fix any leaking problems from around the valve cover. Alright, let's change the oil. The plug on the drain pan is located just right under the motor. It's really easy to see. And once it's loosed, just go ahead and unscrew it, pull it out, and try not to burn yourself on the oil.
Uh-oh, I dropped it. Jeez.
The oil filter is located right on the side of the block, and once you loosen it up, it just comes right off. It's only finger tight. It will leak oil out as you take it off, so be ready for that. I mentioned that I wasn't sure which type of oil filter we needed. As you can see, this one has coarse threads, and we've got coarse threads and fine threads. So I'm going to go ahead and return the one with fine threads and make a note that this takes a pH 16 filter. Just going to make sure that we get some oil all over the gasket and all over the oil gasket. Helps it to seal better. And now we're ready to stick the new filter in. The new filter just goes right in place. We'll get it hand tight and then we'll just do about half a turn with the wrench. Get it on there snug. And we're all set with the filter. Now we're going to fill her up with oil. We'll put 4 quarts in, we'll take a measurement and then top it off. So we just want to check and make sure that we have the same oil pressure that we had. Give it a little gas. Yep, right at 40, which is good. It's actually a little higher than we were, so we're good. We've got good temperature, good bolts. and this job is done.